Everyone, thanks for giving us a couple extra minutes to get started. Appreciate that. Thank you for joining our call. Going to talk today about pain to possibility in business. Challenges in our businesses. We're all business people and we all have challenges. And Joe and I have a message to present to you. So, Joe, thanks for being on the call as well too. Why don't you take a couple minutes and introduce yourself, and then we'll get rolling too.
Absolutely. So Brian, thank you so much. I'm super excited about being here doing this with you. My name is Joe Beck. I am the founder of a sales coaching brand called The Sales Activist, and I'm the CEO of M3 Linked, the nation's premier entrepreneur collaboration community. Pretty much a 36-year sales veteran. I've worked with everything from Fortune 50 companies all the way down to solopreneurs. Over the last 36 years, I've been very fortunate to have worked with over 3,500 entrepreneurs and sales professionals, helping them to create breakout sales momentum and success. Super excited about what we're going to be talking about today, Brian, because the things we're going to be talking about today impact entrepreneurs in so many different ways. And I know because I'm experiencing it myself, and I know exactly what that pain is like. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here, Brian. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. And I'm also kind of keeping an eye on the waiting room too, because we do have people that are going to be popping in, hopefully as well. But I'm Brian Monroe. I have been kind of in this space for the last 28 years now. So I kind of started when my daughter was born. So all I have to do is think about how old she is, and then I can kind of get there. But I started in project and program management. And in project and program management, I sort of morphed into having an expertise in recovering troubled projects and helping organizations basically get themselves out of troubled projects, projects behind schedule, over budget, all of it, and sometimes technical problems, all that stuff. Such that when I first started, and since I spent my first 40 years in Canada, I wrote my work visa to come into the US as an expert in troubled projects. Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but when you actually apply for a work visa, you have to pretty well justify that you're not necessarily taking a job away from an American citizen, and you have to have a certain expertise. And I did that in trouble projects and carried that on. But it wasn't too long after that I was starting to look outside of the projects. People were starting to say, well, can you help over here? And soon became more of an operational fixer, I guess is the best way to describe it. And an operational fixer through systematizing, through automation of antiquated workflows, through taking a look at the way that people were doing their work and presenting a slightly different idea for them to take a step back and go, "Oh wow, I actually never thought about it that way." So that's how I kind of got started. Joe, I know you probably experienced the same thing, talking to the folks that you talk to as well, is a lot of times we just present things in a slightly different manner, presented in different vernacular, and they're like, "Oh, never thought about that before."
Yep,
So
absolutely. Yeah, Brian is the operational fixer, and I'm the sales fixer. And when two fixers get together, you come up with answers.
And the other thing we have to be careful of, Joe, because we are fixers, we got to be careful that we never get bored because then we might want to set something on fire so we can fix it. And that's actually kind of, we laugh at that, but I will tell you, I have dealt with organizations where people realize that and they're like, well, I seem to always be getting into this trouble or getting this problem. Well, it's because you're looking for it. So let's just slow down a little bit and not look for pain, but
Hmm.
let's look for, gain and things like that. So I wanted to start by talking about the fact that as business owners, we're all on what I call a pain to possibility, pit to peak and back again journey. And let me show you what that means here. So we have these pits, we have these peaks, we have these pits, and we have these other peaks in our business and in our lives. And there are times that we are here, we're on this nice peak, and we've got no problems at all. There are other times, though, where we find ourselves down into this pit with no way out or seemingly no way out. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get back up into another peak state. Now, a lot of times as business owners, what gets really super confusing for us is that as we're moving forward in our journey, you know, some aspects of our business, we can be over here on a peak. Other aspects of our business, we're down here in a pit. And so what we want to do is we want to have this congruence. We want to always be kind of in this peak state. And if we find ourselves slipping into a pit, we've got to figure out, well, what is the way that we can basically get back to being into a peak state? And I like to say that we're always on this pit to peak to peak type journey. We overcome our obstacles here and we're continuing on because this here represents the fact that we're growing in our business, represents that we're moving forward, and we're always progressing. So in business, it's where am I always seem to be tripping? Where is it? Do I always find that regardless, I'm ending up in some kind of some kind of pit? Joe, I'm not sure if you have a comment on that or anything you want to elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as entrepreneurs, we can all kind of relate to that diagram because there are times when things are running smoothly and we're definitely at a peak. And there are other times, probably more often than we care to admit, where we've fallen into a pit. And sometimes it's hard when you're in that pit to figure out how you get out of it, how you solve that problem, how you get back to that peak. And it makes me think that you know everybody, it doesn't matter who you are as an entrepreneur, there are certain things in your business right now that I'm willing to bet that you wish you could change. So what I want everybody to do is I want you to take a second, and you could do it in your head or you could write it down. I recommend you write it down. I think it'd be more impactful for you. Write down the top two or three things about your business right now that you wish you could change. If you had a wish list, if you could change anything in your business, write down the top two or three things that you would love to change in your business right now, the way it sits. I think this is a really, really important process. Make sure you do that. We'll give everybody 30 seconds to write down what those are. Don't worry, we're not going to ask anybody to share what they are, but we are going to ask you to just jot them down. So let's take 30 seconds, let everybody jot down those two or three things that they wish they could change.
Well, I might as well write down something.
I might be writing for a while if I do that, right?
I gotta put engagement.
Mhm. Okay, so now that we've jotted some of those things down, and look, there might be others, but normally when you go through a an exercise like this, the top two or three usually jump out at you because you're living with them day by day. You're feeling the pain. You might be right in the middle of that pit right now, and I'm sorry if that's creating some type of visceral reaction for you. But the reality is, it's usually easy to identify what those two or three things are. Right now, here's something that we don't really think about a lot, but I want everybody to now sit back and try to remember one really, really important thing. And it might be easy for some of you, it might be hard for others, but I want you to try to remember, why did you get into the business that you're in? Why did you make the choice to get into the business that you're in? Jot it down, stick it in the back of your mind. Just think about that right now, because I think it's super, super important that you get in touch with your why, that you got into the business in the first place, especially after just going through the exercise of talking about your pain points. So, what's your why? And we want you to think about that for a second. Now, Brian, I know, is going to have some examples, and I have some too, but
Yeah.
everybody has a why, and your why needs to be powerful. But sometimes that question at the top of the slide is, how did we even get here? Like, how did we get so far removed from our why? that we feel the way we do about our business. And Brian, why don't you add something to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, one of the whys that pops up for me right away is time freedom. I wanted to
Hmm.
be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a business owner because I wanted to control my time a little bit more. I didn't want to have to be clocking in and out. But then it's kind of funny because then you say, well, how do we get here? And I'm like, how did I get this Outlook calendar full of calls and things that I have to do? I'm supposed to be doing this for time freedom.
Hmm.
And so as a business owner, you got to think this is why I started it, but how is it that I got here? We
Hmm.
did come up with some examples that I think if you take a look at maybe some of the things that you jotted down, for me, I'll just give my example of time freedom. There's a good chance that what you jotted down is going to fall into some one of these buckets. Stuck in the day-to-day grind. Well, I just gave you an example of how I started a business for time freedom, and then I look at my Outlook calendar. I'm like, oh, not again. I got a full day full of stuff, right? The chaotic and unscalable processes. Take a look at what you're doing in your business, and will it scale? Is it chaotic? I've spoke to a lot of people that are, they're elite at getting clients into the door and into the point where the client pays and now become, kind of goes from a prospect. Now they're a paid client. And this is the time when we're supposed to, as business owners, pour our value, our services, our product, everything, lots of value on them. And they're supposed to have this amazing experience dealing with us. But if they feel our chaos, like they're not going to stay a client for very long. And then, of course, flatline growth, valuation concerns. I love to talk about the fact that kind of loops back to us as owners, down at the bottom. So, when was the last time you were able to take a true vacation to actually step away from the business? I spoke to a couple in the fall. They're a husband and wife team that ran an IT shop. I shouldn't say ran, they still do. And I asked them, I said, when was the last time you guys actually took a vacation together? And they both started laughing on the call. I'm like, what's funny? They said, well, we tried to go to Europe. And after about the third day, we were just bombarded with emails and phone calls and text messages from the team. We had to cut our vacation short and come back. And the thing that really struck with me, these people were kind of laughing, but were they laughing because they really thought it was funny, or were they laughing because, they could kind of feel internally, wow, what have we got into? We just admitted to this guy that we have no time freedom. We can't do anything. Joe, what do you've obviously experienced stuff like this too, right?
Yeah, you are speaking my language right now, Brian. Part of the reason why I was so excited about this project with you is because I'm living that myself. Abby and I in the development of our business, we fail that vacation test. Absolutely. Anybody who's ever been building something and in the early days, especially you're grinding and you're trying to build something, that time freedom is very, very elusive. And I know and have known for quite a long time that we've been failing that part of the process. And, you know, recognize there has to be a better way. Like there has to be a better way of running the business and your life in conjunction with it. So, when Brian started showing me some of this stuff, it immediately was like a light bulb coming off in my head, recognizing that I was failing that already, have been, and continue to, and that there's changes that need to come.
And so in doing that, Joe, talk to me. What if it was fixed?
Yeah, great question. What if this was fixed? Take a second and look back. And I don't know what everybody wrote down as their two or three things, but imagine if you were able to take a pen and draw a line through those problems and say, that's fixed, done, check mark. This one's fixed, done, check mark. What if those were fixed? Well, the question that I come back with when I think about things being fixed is what type of impact would that have on your life? And I want to walk everybody through this because I think this is a really powerful exercise. When you look at those things being fixed in your life, I want you to think about the lost opportunity time that these things create in your life, the things that you're having taken away from you, things that are stolen from your life because you're dealing with those one, two, or three things. So the first impact is, what do you gain back by those things being fixed? I'll tell you the first thing, you get massive peace of mind, right? Massive peace of mind, because when you know those problems are behind you, you feel better. But what is the impact and what does it have on your life? Maybe it creates hours and hours of more time that you can reallocate towards things that are more important to you. Maybe they are higher value activities that create a bigger impact in your business or in your personal life. The idea of work life balance, I think, is a myth. I don't think there is such a thing as work life balance. There's work life integration. Like, it's
It's a good
really,
one.
really
Yeah.
hard to not think about the other when you're doing the one. So the impact should always be stuff that's going to just change the whole landscape of what you're dealing with. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's you're spending your time doing 50-cent activities and you're giving up tens of thousands of dollars by better utilizing your time doing those things. And there are people that do that. They spend their time on low value activities and they give up those greater opportunities for themselves. So that impact could be massive in your lives. And I'm going to tell you that I'm willing to bet that the things that you wrote down on your list, if you were to gain back the time from those two things, I promise you would be 10, 20, or 30 times what you're giving up. You're missing so much by not having those things fixed. And if those two things were completely fixed in your business, think of what that would do for your life. Because that's the reality that most founders, entrepreneurs, business owners deal with in the early stages and development of their business.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you start to talk to people and you find out what that individualized why is, and then mapping over to where they're really stuck in their business, and then you start to introduce possibilities to fix that, and gain back that time like we've got here, and then the impact comes in. They, oh, well, I would do this and this and this.
Sure.
I know when I gain more time back in my work week, I tend to use that time to be creative. So
Yeah.
that's the time when I'll be saying, hey, you know what? I've I've talked to a client and we talked about this kind of webinar, that kind of webinar, because I really like to do this kind of stuff. And so that's when I get super creative. Oh, I've got some time back. Why don't I get creative? Or, you know, I'll give you a personal example. We were just away last weekend in Tucson, and we're in a resort that had a whole bunch of beautiful oil paintings, all Southwest oil paintings. And I was reminded that it was 2001 was the last time I ever put a brush to canvas, because I used to do fine art as a way to just break free, relieve some stress. And I made a commitment. And on that trip, I basically ordered a bunch of supplies. I said, I'm going to make time to do that because it's just so healthy for us too. We think about, the impact, what would the impact on your life? Well, the impact could actually be physical impact as
Sure.
well, which is big.
Absolutely.
So,
It's
that's
it's real.
exactly. And so this is what's driven, Joe and I, we've been talking about this for quite a bit. And, what's our mission? Like, take a look at our mission. Our mission is to help business leaders understand that growth doesn't come from working harder. It comes from building, the systems, building the processes, building the automation, the use of AI. It becomes from building smarter. And with the right operating system and tools and templates and teaching and AI and accountability, a company can scale, it can grow with confidence, and basically it can, the sky's the limit. It's so sad. Um, I've got this vivid image in my head that I picture this. It's always a gentleman. So I picture this older gentleman leaving his CPA's office, walking in the parking lot, his head's down, and he's just kind of shuffling to the car because he's just been told that the business that he's been building for a lifetime does not have the valuation that's required for him to retire in the next year, like him and his wife planned. And he now has to go home and share that information and say, honey, I got to keep at this for at least another 5 years because the valuation's not there. And why is the valuation not there? Because he's still the magic in the business and has not replaced himself with systems, process, tools, templates, leadership, and accountability. So,
Mhm.
Joe, we talked about we actually even yesterday we're talking about this mission of ours and how it is we
Yeah.
want to get out there and share this.
Yeah, and this resonates with me very deeply on a personal level. And you only have to look in the chat here on this call. My wife Abby's with us, and she put in there, and like when I say we are living this, we are absolutely living this. And those systems are not where we need them to be in our own business. And she pointed out, like, it's been truly over 5 years since we've taken a real vacation. And, yeah, that wasn't prompted. She's sharing that because that's our reality. That's why this mission is so important. That's why this work, the things that we're talking about today, are so important because I'm living it. I know exactly what it can do. Working harder is not the answer. Working smarter, building systems, and having an organized process around it is the answer.
Yeah, and I like that. The whole we've all heard that term, working smart. You got to you got to work smarter, not harder. A lot of times, though, people don't understand what that means
Yeah.
because what we've found, and Joe, you and I come across this quite a bit, is we are dealing with people that are visionaries. They've come in and they've started their organization, they started their companies because of a vision. So as that type of personality and that type of person that's got the thinking and the visionary going on, a lot of times they're not the same type of person that can think about a process or a system or putting things in order. I've had business owners say, Brian, that stuff gives me a headache. I said, well, yeah, that's because you're a visionary. You're all up here coming up with the beautiful ideas. It's our job to make sure that they're executed in order, in priority, how it's going to be done perfectly. So this is why we created this system. This call is to talk about what we've codenamed BOSS, Business Operating System Summit. The summit is essentially the training that has been created around a business operating system. So what I did is last year, where is it here? Last year, I went through all of these. These are all business operating systems, and these are about half of the ones that I could have pulled off of the Barnes and Noble shelf. But I went through all of those and realized that these are all great authors that are putting together programs very specific for their audience. And I sat down last year and I had this conversation with my wife, and she's like, well, dear, then why don't you just write your own? Write your own based on your experiences, based on what you've read, based on what you've researched, put together that program. And so that's what I did. And I created the MTI operating system for essentially corporate America. This is a 4-day system for corporations. Day one, two, and three happen a couple of weeks apart. And then day four is 90 days after day three, because day three, they make this 90-day plan of improvements across every aspect of their business. And then we come back 90 days later and we do a check and report on this. And so I was sharing this with Joe, and Joe and I were going back and forth on this, and we gravitate with it. And then all of a sudden, Joe's like, you know, there's a whole pile of small and medium businesses that want access to the great tools and templates and systems that corporate America gets. Maybe we should revector this. And this is exactly how BOSS
Mhm.
came to be. So BOSS is basically a revectored program specific for the small medium business. It's every single tool is exactly the same. Every template is exactly the same. The leadership and training is exactly the same. And you can bet the accountability from your two coaches here would be exactly the same. But
Mhm.
it's designed in a cohort manner so that we can also take advantage of the learning from the other business owners and the other type of people that are in the room. Because half the time, some of the magic isn't from something that Joe says or something that I said. It could be something from somebody else that's another business owner says, hey, I struggled here and I had that system and I had that same problem. So because we
Hmm.
needed to honor small medium business instead of, full day sessions, we broke each session down into two half day sessions. So we've got 6 sessions between the mastering, the mentoring, and the maximizing. And then we'll still do that exact same 90-day run, 90 days to build out and improve upon and track all the efforts that
Hmm.
we've been learning about. And then we come back for a seventh session, the monitoring session, or what I like to nickname the return and report session. And I wanted to make sure that we put it on here that you can be guaranteed we are going to be introducing AI solutions, AI products, both generative and agentic AI into the mix because that's all part of the working smarter as opposed to harder.
Hmm.
Joe, you got any
Yep.
comments you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was so excited when Brian said that, he would agree to revector all this because for the average small business owner, imagine taking one whole day to go do something else to try to make your business better. Most of you probably would struggle to imagine stepping away for an entire day and not be running your business, but to be working on it. And I said, look, we need to figure out a way to do this for the average small business owner. And the half day approach where you're able to chop it up into a smaller bit is really, really important. But let's talk about a little bit about the biggest challenge that really faces small business owners is the fear factor over the change that might be necessary. And when Brian and I first talked about this, I said, we're not really changing, and I'm not going to steal Brian's thunder on this, but we're really talking about something entirely different. And Brian, why don't you kind of jump into this? What we're really,
Yeah.
really discussing, in this content.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And you're right. It's not about change. You know, I tell people, change. If I had a water bottle in my hand here, and I took that water bottle and I scrunched it right down. I completely changed that water bottle. One, it's useless, but two, it's still just a scrunched down water bottle. But if I take a bunch of water bottles and I take them over to a manufacturing facility and they get all melted down, whatever they do, and cleansed, and now they turn into the latest, lid for a Tupperware container, dating myself by saying Tupperware, but Tupperware container, now I've transformed that water bottle into something completely different. And this is what we're doing. We're not about change. Change can come and go. We're about full transformation. We need to transform these businesses into fine running machines so that the owners can take a step back and take a look and go, yes, my business is running well. I love it. Kind of mentality. And transformation requires those systems and requires, the tools and the templates. It's going to require the coaching, but right here in the dead center, it requires this accountability that I don't care who you are, we all need accountability. To give
Hmm.
you an example, last week I went back to my gym where I work out. Well, sure, I should say where I worked out once in a while, and I actually hired a coach. Do I need a coach to tell me what necessarily to do? No, but I need a couple things. I need a financial commitment to get my butt out of the house and over to the gym. And then I do need, once I'm there, because I'm now financially committed to that, once I'm there, I do need somebody to look at me and go, you can probably give me 2 more reps. I need the accountability. This is what Joe and I do with business leaders. We basically work through the tools, the templates, all the systems that we have. Like there's 4 workbooks to this, and each thing's about 60, 70 pages. There's a lot of great information there. But what we're going to do is we're going to just give a little bit more challenge, a little bit more accountability and say, hey, you thought of 3 amazing ideas. How about you give me 3 more ideas? Because
Yeah,
when you push somebody like that, usually the winning idea is one of the latter ones. Joe, what do
sure.
you have?
Yeah, it's so, so true. When you think of those things, systems, accountability, and coaching, the thing that I've started saying, and I said this to Brian, and it's very, very true, we're not really in the systems, accountability, and coaching business. We're in the fear removal business. For every entrepreneur, every business owner, you know there's change that needs to occur. You hope that change results in transformation. You may not have used that word, but that's really what you're hoping for. But there's a reason why you haven't necessarily done it so far. And that reason is usually rooted in fear.
Yep.
It's rooted in fear. And, we put together a solution to that for entrepreneurs, for business owners, for founders that are dealing with that. And Brian, why don't you kind of share what we put on the next slide and kind of put it out there for
Yeah,
people
let's go. Yeah,
to
let's just
understand
get
it?
into some of the details. Absolutely.
Sure.
You know,
So here's the thing that I think people think many times. They think that fear holds them back. And the reality is, usually the fear itself is just the first wave of the long-term effects of what's going wrong in their business. And we've developed the operating system. Brian's developed it, and he's been fortunate enough to involve me in it because I can already see the impact it's having. Um, you have to look at things differently. You have to look at it through a different lens. And people look at the costs associated to change and transformation. And there's two types of people in the world when they look at those costs. You know, sometimes people will look at things and literally know that something is something that they can't change. Other times they know they can change it, but they're afraid to change it. And here's the reality: what we've built in this program can have a massive impact on anybody that's participating. In fact, I'm willing to bet that the impact is probably 10, 20, or 30 times more than whatever the cost for the program would be in the long run. You just don't know that because you're living it, you're in the middle of it, you're feeling that pain. The cost is massively more than the cost of solving it, but the fear holds you back. Now, you don't even really know what you're missing out on. You don't know what the greater potential for your business is, the greater potential for your life may be, what you may have happen as a result of creating that transformation. But transformation takes time, it takes commitment, and there's always a cost associated to it. Now, here's what I'll tell you about people and investing in themselves. And I've seen this and done this for a very, very long time. There are two types of people when it comes to making a change. There are people that look at financial challenges as obstacles. You look at it and say, oh, well, $39.97, $4,000. Wow, like that's a massive obstacle. Okay. And then there are people that view things like that through a lens of saying to themselves, well, that's an opportunity. If I do that and get the change I'm looking for, that opportunity is going to get me 10, 20, 30 times more than that by fixing the problems I have. Here's the reality. No matter how you look at it, whether you look at it as an obstacle or you look at it as an opportunity, you're right. You're
I
right.
love that.
Because if you look at it as an obstacle, I'm going to tell you right now, that's all it'll ever be for you. You'll struggle to make changes. You'll struggle to figure out, how do I get to that next level? Because you will look at the solutions, the true transformation costs, and that will remain your obstacle, and it will also remain your reality. But if you look at this as a true opportunity for yourself, and I'm talking to people that actually do look at this that way. If you look at it as an opportunity for yourself, like you solve that problem and you're on to that greater return, that true transformation, well, that's your reality. Because if that's how you look at it, you can make it happen. But if you look at it as an obstacle, it's not possible. So here's what I want to tell you. Brian and I both know that the people that view this as an obstacle probably aren't our people. Just being honest. But the people that view it as an opportunity, we never want that number to be what holds you back. And I know Brian wants to add some stuff to this, but it's so
Yeah.
important to view things through a lens of opportunity.
Well, and Joe, like again, we kind of start off with let's address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the obstacles. Price is one of them. Time is sometimes another obstacle that we love to
Yep.
have people love to talk about. I just don't have the time. I don't have the dollars, or I don't have the time, or the money's not a problem, but I just don't have the time. But the thing is, when you look at that opportunity, what is your cost to gaining a new client? When I look at something like that, I think about what is the average client that I have valued for me. And if I take a look and I say, look at if I commit the time and I commit the dollars and I go through the program and I really get on the transformation and I get things dialed in tight and I happen to get one more client out of it, what does that mean for the business?
Hmm.
So 39.97 is the price of the program. That is 1/10 of the corporate price, by the way. This $10,000 a day is the corporate price times 4 days, 40 grand. This is the um, part of making it accessible to everybody that's in here. However, we are launching. And because we're launching, we want to do whatever it is we can possibly do to essentially help you, encourage you, because what we're looking for in the end is you to help and encourage us a little bit by give us a bit of feedback. And we'd love a video testimonial so that we can go out there and share this with other business owners that are stuck, other business owners that are discouraged, other business owners that are like one step away from packing in their dream because they don't realize that there's another route to this. And so as the launch special, we're basically giving the whole thing 1997 for the first seat. And if you want to bring a friend, a coworker, or a partner, 997 for the second seat. So we basically cut that all in half. And that again, we're just looking for a little bit of feedback. We're looking for some key video testimonials. We want to create a cohort of people that are just excited to get in here and dive in and start using the tools, using the templates, getting the coaching and the training. And then we get to start seeing all of the results and the wins and stuff like that. Because hey, when it's a group of people and we're all starting the wins, that's when it gets super exciting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Brian, and I love that you shared it that way because here's the reality. If you're the type of person that looks at that as an obstacle, you looked at it as an obstacle at the 39.97 price. You probably look at it as an obstacle as the 19.97 price. But here's the difference between that person that views it as an opportunity. With what you just described, maybe that 19.97 is a little bit of a struggle or reach for you, but maybe you know somebody that would love this type of help and support, and maybe they can help out and cover $3,000 so you both can come through the program and you can take care of them later on by settling that up. See, that's how an opportunity thinker looks at a challenge. They look at that as how can I solve it? Not I can't solve it. How can I solve it?
Exactly. I love that manner of thinking too. It's like, you know, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. It's all, it's all how you piece it together. And I will tell you that there's such a great example, Joe, because I love to collaborate. And so if part of the way I'm solving something is through collaboration, well, then it's perfect because that just
Mhm.
modes melt nicely into what I like to do. So essentially at this point, this is now totally up to you, up to folks that are on the call, folks that are watching this video. It is time for you. And what we want to do is I'm going to show you this URL here, call.bizossummit.com. This is your invitation for a personal Q&A call because what ends up happening is I know people see these videos and they attend these webinars and like, wow, I got a question. I'm not too sure. No, we want to hear the questions. We want to hear the questions one on one, and we want to take the opportunity to get to know you and your business. And, again, if you're willing to share right off the bat what some of your top one, two, three pain points are, at least then we know where we're coming from so that we can customize our approach. Because while this is a group program and everybody's going to be working in a cohort together, there is the ability in our training and our teaching and the way Joe and I deliver to slide in customizations all over the place, especially when it comes
Mhm.
to some of the tools and the AI tooling and that. So this is kind of our way of customizing a bit for you.
Hmm. Absolutely. And Brian, I will tell you what excites me most about the business opportunity system or the business operating system summit is that I can already see the impact just in the little bit of time and the work that we've done together that it's starting to have on our business. And I'm thinking about how exciting it'll be to help other small business owners overcome some of these challenges. I don't care what people wrote down as their number one, two, or three challenge, but I know their lives will be significantly improved if we address one or two of those things on that list. So that's what makes it
Yeah.
really, really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's what's going to help drive our mission. So excellent. Well, I thank everyone for attending. I thank everyone for watching as well. Next week, next Friday, we are going to do another session like this because I still think that the word needs to happen. The summit itself is starting on Friday, September 12th. So on Friday, September 5th, we're going to do another session like this where we can basically share our mission with other folks and look to really build a strong cohort for the launch on Friday, September 12th. So thank you, everyone.